and the person laughs at me? What if I ask for forgiveness and they crush me? This is where the role of a mediator is so useful in the process of asking and giving forgiveness. The mediator is someone who is able to offer some degree of protection on both sides. Protect the person who's saying sorry from being crushed, and protect the person who's forgiving, help them to make that step, to make that move in a way that that's not too painful for them. And we see the role of the mediator very nicely in the story of Indra and Krishna. When Indra offends Krishna by trying to kill the Brajvasis, and he comes to say sorry, he's really embarrassed to come before Krishna because he's just done something really horrible, and he's really scared that Krishna might be so upset that he'll just kill me, he'll destroy me. So who does he bring with him? Surabhi. And in the Braj versions of this story, is described how he's actually holding on to the tail of Surabhi and crawling behind her, putting her first, with the hope that Krishna loves cows so much that if he sees Surabhi first, his anger will calm down and he won't destroy me. So Surabhi in that situation serves as a mediator between Krishna and Indra, as a way to help Indra preserve himself, to overcome his own fear in coming to Krishna, and to soften up Krishna so that he's more willing to give the forgiveness. Similarly, when Dhruva Maharaj is really angry at the Yakshas, one Yaksha has killed his brother Uttam, and Dhruva is really upset at that. And so he starts killing all the Yakshas left and right, he's slaughtering them. Then someone needs to mend the situation. And so Brahma comes and says, or is it Swayambhuva Manu? Swayambhuva Manu comes and says, please calm down. And you guys, it's okay, So he served as the mediator. Similarly, when in the Daksha story, when Daksha and Shiva are upset with each other, and Daksha needs forgiveness, he comes begging for forgiveness, and he's not sure whether Lord Shiva will forgive him or not. Then in that situation, Brahma comes and he serves as a mediator. And he encourages Shiva, he says, please give up your anger towards Daksha. And Lord Mahadev says, actually I wasn't angry to him to begin with. I was just wanting to teach him a lesson. So Brahma then is again serving as a mediator. Similarly in the story of the Prachetas, when the Prachetas are angry at the trees and they're burning all the trees to the ground. And then again, I think it's Brahma or is it Manu? I think it's Brahma, who comes and serves as the mediator and says, calm down on this side, and you trees, why don't you give your daughter in marriage to Prachetas, and in this way let things heal. So again and again and again in Bhagavatam we find that whenever there's a tough situation of where there's real fear of how forgiveness is going to be given or received, then there's always a mediator involved. Someone who's typically senior or respected or loved by both sides. And someone can say, okay, this is, I'm going to protect you as you're asking for forgiveness, and I'm going to make sure that you're satisfied before you give forgiveness. To kind of negotiate that journey. So the point is, it can be tough. It can be difficult to beg forgiveness, and we don't have to do it alone. In fact, we often shouldn't. Sometimes there is a real fear that things can get worse rather than get better when we ask for forgiveness. The person can be even more harsh towards us, and that can hurt us further and push us away even more from the process of forgiveness. So often then having a mediator is someone that's very helpful, so a go-between, someone who can help on both sides. Okay? So that was one leftover point I wanted to make. And then the other thing is, what if the forgiveness is not forthcoming? We go out to ask forgiveness, and there's no forgiveness coming from the other side. It's okay. It's okay. The act of asking for forgiveness helps us. If that person is not ready to forgive, sometimes we might have to ask again, sometimes again, sometimes 3 times or 5 times. Sometimes we just have to give it space and allow time to bring them to a point where they are willing to offer their forgiveness, where they're willing to calm down, to let go of the pain and the hurt. Time is a friend for a devotee. Remember we said that the supersoul, Krishna within the heart, externally manifests as the time factor, Bhagavatam says. So time can kill us, it does. But for a devotee, time can also protect us, it can help us, it can heal us as well, because time is Krishna's hand. And in time, everyone's perspective changes. We learn more, that person learns more, and we're both in a different place. And so sometimes a year, 2 years, I've even seen 10, 20 years later, devotees come back together and say, I think I'm in a place where we can normalize the relationship again. So, even if forgiveness is one way, or asking for forgiveness is one way, it's still worth it, because it helps us. The person asking for forgiveness is peaceful again. We improve, we purify ourselves. That fire of repentance, it cleanses our heart. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Multiple tries are not bad at all. Okay, so those were 2 little remaining points that I wanted to make. One is the role of the mediator, which we see in Bhagavatam many, many times, to ease the poke, the bite of being humbled like that. And secondly, it's okay if it's one way, in one direction. Now, what about the other side? What if we're in a situation where someone has hurt us? And that is bound to happen. It probably has happened many, many times in our lives, where we are in a position where someone has hurt us. How do we forgive? In fact, the methods for forgiving are very different than the methods for asking forgiveness. Forgiving is something that requires a lot of work and is not easy. In fact, it can be even more difficult than asking for forgiveness. Because when you are trying to forgive, you're in the position of being the victim. You've been hurt, you've been harmed. And so, how do I forgive? How do I forgive if a person is asking for forgiveness? And how do I forgive if a person is not asking for forgiveness? So, the first and most important block, obstacle to forgiving anyone is anger. Anger is one of those things that's very, very powerful and very, very dangerous. Every quality in this world can be used in Krishna's service. We can use greed in Krishna's service by being greedy for more association of devotees and more service for the Lord. We can use our lust in Krishna's service. We can use, by being attracted to Krishna, we can use everything in Krishna's service. We can even use anger in Krishna's service. Like Hanumanji did. He became angry and began to destroy and burn Lanka to the ground. Or Arjun on the battlefield. Prabhupada says, you cannot fight if you're not angry. He was angry, and so therefore he fought. But anger is probably the most dangerous thing to use in Krishna's service. And there are very, very, very few circumstances when anger can be used appropriately. Nearly always, when we try to use anger, it ends up using us. We end up used by it. It's a weapon that's so powerful that we lose control of it very quickly. It's like trying to drive a sports car, one of these ones with these very powerful engines. If you don't know, or one of those motorcycles that they just go. If you don't know how to use it and you push the accelerator, you end up in an accident because you don't know how to harness the power that you have. So, my spiritual master Hanuman Goswami, he says this often. He says, anger is the most dangerous thing to use in Krishna's service. Or forget Krishna's service, it's the most dangerous thing to use, period. Because it can very quickly get out of hand. Here's the problem with anger. Okay? Number one, it's usually misdirected. I'm angry about what you said to me in the meeting we had. But where does it come out? I say, oh, the prasadam you cooked was terrible. Right? It comes out instead on something else you did that has no connection to what I'm actually angry about. I can't stand the food you cook. I can't stand the way you look at me. I can't stand the way you talk. I can't stand the way you smile. I can't stand anything about you, even though the only thing I'm angry about is that one thing you did, right? It's misdirected. And often it can be misdirected even at someone totally different. I came home back from work. I was really upset at something that someone did at work. And who do I take out that anger on? My kids or my wife. So that's the first problem with anger, is that it's meant to be directed here, and instead it comes out here at someone totally unsuspecting or undeserving of that anger. Second problem is that it's disproportionate. Often there is a reason to be angry, but the response should be this much anger. And instead, it blows up into something huge. Someone's standing on your toe in the subway, and they're standing, and you're thinking, why in the world do they not get it? They're on my toe. This is upset. I'm upset. This is angry. This is horrible. This is painful. And look at them. They're just smiling there, and on. They're talking, and don't they care about me? And what do? Whack! And the guy, oh, what happened? Right? Our anger comes out, and it's totally disproportionate to the offense itself. Little bit, and it just builds and builds, and it blows up. So anger is usually misdirected. It's usually disproportionate. And therefore, it's very dangerous. If we can use anger in a way that's properly directed to the right person, in proper proportion to what it needs, what it deserves, and it's done for the purpose of teaching them something, genuinely educating them, then sometimes it can be useful. But usually, we don't have control over those things. It's just, it gets totally out of hand. It's like this with kids, right? Any parent will appreciate. Anger can be very useful in raising children. When they see you're upset about something, children learn from that. But for that anger to be effective, what do you need to do? You need to be very specific about what you're angry about. You want to give them immediate feedback, right? So they do something yesterday and you become angry the next day. For kids, it's like, what? What just happened? Why are they upset at me? Right? It needs to be directly proportionate to what they did. And instead, what happens as parents often is we've had a tough day at work. The kids do something wrong. They spilled the glass of milk. And we're, and you're like this, and you're like that, and you're so clumsy. And it's like, oh, and we can really hurt someone like that, right? So anger is like that. If we don't have control over it, it will control us. And usually it's very difficult for us to control that anger. And therefore, when in doubt, we should not use it. We should walk away from a situation, breathe 10 times deeply, then consider, how am I going to respond to that email? Show someone else the email before you send it out. But we take every measure to protect ourselves from ourselves. We take every measure to protect ourselves from that anger because it can be so devastating. This was, again, it was Shringi's problem, right, in the Pariksha Maharaj. He felt angry and he just blew it out of proportion. He cursed the king to die in 7 days. For what offense? Because the king put a dead snake around his father's neck. That was an insult. So he could have insulted the king. He didn't have to kill him. But that's the nature of anger. It just goes out of hand. The last thing about anger is that it's unproductive. It doesn't actually lead to anything most of the time. The only message we convey when we're angry is the other person looks at us and goes, oh, this person's angry. Let's step away. Suniti makes this point to Dhruva. When Dhruva's really upset and his lips are trembling in anger. He's so upset at his father and his stepmother. And Suniti tells her son, she says, my dear boy, if you want to achieve revenge, or you want to achieve the kingdom, you can do it. But you're going to have to give up your anger. She says, your anger will make you unproductive. You're not going to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. Why? Because it clouds us. It blinds us. We can't see anything clearly when we're angry. And so she says, if you want to achieve your goal, you have to be focused on your goal. And if you've got this cloud of anger in front of you, you're not going to be able to see the goal, much less achieve it. So the advice she gives them is really tough. She says, you give up your anger, and what you need to do, if you want to be happy, you want to achieve your goal, is follow the advice of your stepmother, your evil stepmother. She is a horrible person, and this gives me so much pain to say it, but she's right. Because you know what Suruchi told Dhruva when she insulted him? She said, if you want to sit on your father's lap, which means to inherit the throne, right? Sitting on your father's lap for a prince means you're going to be heir to the throne. If you want to be that, you will going to have to worship Lord Narayan and come back. After you worship Lord Narayan, come back in another birth as my child, and then you can serve me. And she says, Suniti, his mother says, yeah, she's right. She may be evil, but she's right. And that's why you need to give up your anger, because you need to be able to actually follow her advice. Go to the forest and worship Lord Vishnu. He is the one who's going to give you what you want. I can't do it, even though I'm so angry with you. I'm so upset. I can't do it. So it's misdirected. It's disproportionate. It's unproductive. And finally, it's self-centered. Did you know that anger is actually pleasing to us? It gives us a twisted sense of joy. Why? Because it allows us, it gives us some time to focus on ourselves. Again, that same thing we talked about with self-pity and pride. It's another time when we can just, when we're angry, we're indignant. How dare they? And all of a sudden, for one moment in our lives, we feel like we're right. We're righteous. We're good. Did you see what they did to me? How dare they do something like that? That was absolutely wrong. It's clear as day they were wrong. And therefore, I should be angry. And we take pleasure in that anger. You know, in the Bhagavatam it says, if someone insults a Vaishnav, you should cut out their tongue. And now I'm going to cut out this person's tongue. And we feel good about it. It makes us righteous. It makes us a warrior for God. We feel proud of ourselves. He's the one who offended. I didn't offend. And I'm just going to cut out their tongue today. But watch what's happening. We're taking pleasure in that anger. I feel good because I'm the best. And if we take pleasure in anger, we cannot use it properly. There's nothing to enjoy about anger. There's nothing worth taking pleasure in anger. At best, it's a tool. It's a tool that can be used very carefully. But the moment we start taking joy in our anger, the moment we make it self-centered, the moment we start feeling self-righteous about ourselves, now we've lost control of it. And so you see someone like Srila Prabhupada, when he used to use anger, it was very, very carefully. It was directed exactly at the person who he wanted to teach, in just the right proportion to make the point. And he took no pleasure in it at all. The way you know he took no pleasure is that the moment the point was made, Prabhupada's anger evaporated like it never existed. It was a tool. And many, many devotees who serve Prabhupada will tell you this, that when Prabhupada got angry at them, they felt their world was over. And yet, just as quickly as they got the point, usually it would say, we're so sorry, Prabhupada, or, oh my God, why did I do that? They feel bad. As soon as Prabhupada saw that the point was made to the child, to his disciple, poof, he would behave with them as if nothing had ever happened. As if that person had never done anything. No grudges, no lingering upsetness, nothing. Prabhupada didn't take any pleasure. He used it as a tool, just like a hammer and a chisel. You don't need it anymore? Put it away. No need to cling to it. So, this is the big, big challenge in terms of forgiving, is holding on to the anger. But here's one thing to keep in mind, is that when we give up our anger, and when we give up our upsetness, we will feel a great sense of relief. Relieving ourselves of anger is far more joyful than nursing the anger within us. Nursing anger is a twisted form of joy, but giving up anger is pure relief. Because anger forces us to hold on to something. We're not able to forgive, and we nurse that grudge inside. And the longer we nurse that grudge inside, the more it burns us. This is the thing about such grudges, is we think the grudge is their fault. They're the ones who harmed me. They should burn in hell. But who's actually burning? We are. When we're not able to forgive, when we're not able to let go, it's us who is suffering. Do this little experiment. Take your fist and clench it as hard as you can. Do this. Okay? Everyone clenching their fist? Now clench it harder. And a little bit harder. What does it feel like? painful, right? Don't let go. Keep clenching. Now let go. What does it feel like? So much relief, right? So much relief. When we hold grudges in our heart, when we're not able to forgive, when we nurse our anger, it's like this. And over time, the muscles clamp up. They spasm, and it becomes worse and worse and worse. And the pain festers, and it's killing us inside. It's burning us. And when we forgive, when we let go, it's waves of relief. It's waves of relief. And it actually has nothing to do with whether that person wants to be forgiven or not. Whether that person says sorry or not, or asks for forgiveness. Whether they ask or not is actually beside the point. Ramayana describes that when Lord Ramachandra came back from the forest after all those years, the person who had caused it was still there. Right? Her name was Kaikeyi. She was still there. But Lord Ramachandra had long given up his anger towards her. He had long forgiven her. Did Kaikeyi ask for forgiveness? No. Not up to that point she hadn't. When she met Ramachandra, when he came back, she felt remorseful. And she expressed her remorse. But all these years in the forest, at least until the last year, Lord Ramachandra lived happily. How did he live happily? Every day did he wake up thinking, oh, that Kaikeyi, I'm here because of that. When Ravan stole Sita, did he think, oh, Kaikeyi caused it? Had she not done this, we wouldn't be here today. And Sita wouldn't be lost. Does he ever blame Kaikeyi even once? No. Because the minute he walks away from Ayodhya, he has walked away from his anger and from his grudge. And he's forgiven. So that when he meets her, Ramayana says that he treats Kaikeyi as affectionately and as lovingly as he treats Kaushalya, his own mother. That's in Lord Ramachandra's interest. Kaikeyi was there, and whether she was burning in the fire of remorse or living in the good life, it didn't matter to Lord Ramachandra. His heart was clear. He lived those first 12 years in the forest, or 13 years, happily, peacefully, because he had let go. So, forgiveness is very powerful, it's very good for us. Now, we might say, well, if they've done something wrong to me, don't they deserve a reaction? Sure, you're asking to forgive, but don't they deserve to get a reaction for what they've done? And the answer is absolutely yes. They do deserve a reaction. When someone harms us, they deserve a reaction. When they harm anyone, they deserve a reaction. And 100%, the law of karma will give them a reaction. We know this from Bhagavad Gita. We know this from Bhagavad Gita. The law of karma is invincible. No one can escape it. But here's the thing. They will get their reaction. But if we're the ones to give them that reaction, then we're going to get another reaction that follows from it. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You put something out into the world, it's going to come back to you. They did something to you. Now you have the opportunity to stop, to not let it become a cycle, to stop it right there. But they did something to you, they deserve a reaction, and I'm going to give it to them. And so I go back and I do something to them. Now what's going to happen? I've done something to them, now I deserve a reaction. And it's going to come back to me. And it'll go on, and on, and on. And we stay in this cycle for years, for entire lifetimes, for multiple lifetimes. People come back in the next life to work out their enmity towards someone. In fact, Prabhupada explains that sometimes that person will come back as a family member. They'll come back as your husband or your wife, because that's the best possible position from which to give you pain. To become even. Means how dense karma becomes. This is why in Gita, Krishna says, Gahana karmano gati. The flow of karma, gati, karmano gati, gahana, is very dense, very complicated. You can't understand what's going on. It becomes like this mesh. And everyone's getting involved in everyone else's karma. And you've got a choice. You can say, stop. I'm not going to. Let their reaction come to them, but I'm not going to be the one to give it. Krishna needs to find someone else. And I can guarantee you that you wait. Sometimes it takes a year, sometimes 5, sometimes 10, or sometimes 20. You will see they will get their reaction. Or sometimes you will not see, but I promise you they will get their reaction. That's the nature of karma. Karma is invincible. But if we're part of it, then we're going to be messed up in it. One of the nicest examples of this in Bhagavatam is Parashuram. You know Parashuram? The Lord's form who destroys all the evil Kshatriyas. His father is Jamadagni, a great sage. And Jamadagni was, for other reasons, Jamadagni was killed by the king named Kartaviryaarjuna. Unjustly, he was killed. Totally unjustly. It was a horrible, horrible thing he did. Kartaviryaarjuna came and killed Jamadagni. Parashuram became upset at this, angry. And he went out and he killed Kartaviryaarjuna. Was Parashuram right in doing that? Yes. Did he get karma for doing it? Yes. He still got sinful reaction. Bhagavatam describes that Parashuram, the Lord himself, got sinful reaction for killing someone who had unjustly killed his father. That person, did Kartaviryaarjuna deserve to be killed? Yes, he did. Will the person who kills them get a reaction? Yes, they will. This is what makes karma so complicated and so problematic. Prabhupada says in the purport, I'll quote here, Lord Parashuram was also infected by sin because of killing Kartaviryaarjuna, although this was not very offensive. Prabhupada is saying, killing Kartaviryaarjuna was not very offensive because Kartaviryaarjuna deserved to die for what he did. He killed a sage, after all. But Lord Parashuram was also infected by sin because of killing Kartaviryaarjuna, although this was not very offensive. Therefore, whether one be Kartaviryaarjuna, Lord Parashuram, Jamadagni, or whoever one may be, one must act very cautiously and sagaciously. Otherwise, one must suffer the results of sinful activities. This is the lesson we receive from Vedic literature. He's saying it doesn't matter who you are. You could be Lord Parashuram, and you could be totally justified in your anger. You're still going to get a reaction. So that choice is up to us. Does this person deserve to suffer for what they did to me? Yes. Do I have to be the one to give it to them? No. That's my choice. And depending on how I make the choice, I will be setting my own future. I'll be deciding my own future. Sometimes people ask, well, what if you're in a position where you have to correct someone or you have to punish them for what they've done? So, like a parent and a child, or like a guru and a disciple, or like a king and the subjects, or a manager and the manager's subordinates. What if you're in a position where you have to give it to them? Okay, there are certain circumstances, certain types of relationships where it's expected that we will not just forgive, that we will punish or teach them a lesson. I can't just forgive anything my children do. I have to teach them sometimes, and that means sometimes I have to be strong to them or be angry or to punish them. Similarly, someone who's in a position of leadership, they see someone doing something wrong, they have to say, stop, don't do that. In certain relationships, when it's mutually expected, okay, then it can be done. But even there, we can't stay in that role, in that service forever. We find again and again in Srimad Bhagavatam that every king, after they have ruled for many years, what do? They walk away. They go to the forest. Why? Because there's still karmic reaction involved. In all the chastising that you do as a manager at work, or as a leader in the temple, or as a king, or as a president of the country, you're going to get something wrong, right? I mean, every decision can't be perfect. You're going to end up punishing someone who's innocent. You're going to end up letting your anger get the better of you in some occasions. So at some point we have to say, okay, that was a good service. I've done that enough. And now, enough of it. Let me just focus on practicing forgiveness and humility and tolerance. So the point is, the laws of karma are very, very dense. And we have a choice to make. Either we can keep it clenched, or we can let go. We can hold on, or we can forgive. And that choice benefits and harms no one but ourselves. Okay, so that's the prelude. The key question is, how can we get ourselves to forgive? How can we get ourselves to forgive? Regardless of whether that person is asking forgiveness or not, how can we forgive? The first thing we can do is we can change our perspective about that person. One very effective way to change our perspective is to recognize that everyone is forced to act according to the nature they have. Everyone has a certain nature. And if you recognize what someone's nature is, it's much more difficult to blame them for what they do. I'll give you an example. One time someone came to the temple, and I was talking to them and so on, and I was giving them a book or something was going on, and I asked for a donation. And this happened many times, many times. And in each time, they either said no, or gave me something very, very small for the temple. And I remember thinking, wow, they're so stingy. I mean, I know this person, they've got a really good job, they've got a beautiful house, they've got 2 cars, they're living the American dream, and they're so stingy. And my impression of them and everything was not very good. As it so happened, by Krishna's arrangement, someone else who really liked this person told me something about them. And they told me their story. They said, do you know that this person, when they were a child, they grew up in India, and they grew up in complete poverty. And the way they built themselves up is every little penny that they collected and they saved, they used and they invested, and from nothing, they made themselves into who they are today. And to this day, every little penny may count. Now, when someone is a penny pincher, right, we call them penny pinchers, which means stingy people. It's a negative word. But if you know that person's history, all of a sudden I went, oh, now it makes sense. They're penny pinchers in a good way. Because of their penny pinching, they went from being dirt poor to being successful today. And even now, after having a good bank account, they can't get themselves to spend again. They just can't. Why? Because it's just part of their history. It's their nature. And once I recognized their nature, all the anger went away. Immediately it was poof. Okay, now I understand. I can appreciate even. Far from anger, it was appreciation. Okay, I understand. I didn't grow up in those circumstances. When we recognize someone's nature, Krishna says in the Gita, everyone is forced to act according to the qualities they have acquired. When we recognize their nature, it's very difficult to be angry because we realize they have no choice. They're helpless in the way they act. Now, as we'll see with this forgiveness and forgiving thing, this goes one way, right? We should forgive others, we should excuse others based on their nature. But we should not use that argument on ourselves. It's just my nature to be cranky and upset. And so, what can you expect? Everyone should recognize this fact. I'm someone with a bad mood, right? This is my nature. That doesn't work, right? For ourselves, we can't use nature as an excuse. For others, it's very important that we understand their nature and excuse them for it. Same thing with karma. The law of karma, when we say, this happens because of my karma. This is a wonderful explanation for ourselves, for us to deal with our own pain and our own, say, this is my karma, and I should get this much, but Krishna only gave me this much. But you can't use that explanation on others. Right? You can't, you're suffering with something, and I can't say, oh, it's your karma, Prabhu. And frankly, you deserved a whole lot more. Krishna's very kind, he gave you just a little bit. It doesn't work, right? That becomes offensive. So you have to remember that forgiving and forgiveness, the strategies for both are different. And they're not exchangeable. Right? What the standards we use for others, we can't use for ourselves. Unless we want to not progress in our own bhakti. Unless we want to become like them. And then we can apply the same standards. Okay, so we should recognize their nature. The second way we can shift our perspective about other people is that we come to recognize that, oh, they acted in this way probably because they were under duress. Because they were under some difficult circumstance which led them to act in this way. That makes it easier to forgive as well. You know, when Lord Ramachandra left Sita in their hermitage in the forest, and he told Lakshman, you protect her. And then when Sita heard the call of the deer, the call of Ram, she thought, please help, help, help. Then she told Lakshman to go help. And she said it in a very, very strong and very bad way. She said, you should go. And Lakshman said, I don't want to go. Lord Rama asked me to protect you. That's my duty. And I know he's totally capable of looking after himself, which was a fact. But Sita really, she said something really not nice. She said, now I see, this is your plot. You, all along, you were thinking, let Ram die so you can enjoy me. Imagine how much hurt Lakshman felt hearing that. It just broke his heart. He had left his own wife, Urmila, in Ayodhya to come and serve Sita and Ram. How much, he didn't have to come. He wasn't the one banished to the forest. He left her and his whole life to come to the forest for all these years. 14 years in the forest to serve Sita and Ram. And now Sita is telling him that you did all this as a plot, because you wanted to enjoy me? Such a dirty thought? And so he can't handle it. And he runs to the forest. He makes the Lakshman Rekha, and then he goes to the forest to help Ram. And when Ram sees Lakshman, you know what he says? He says, "Why are you here? You should be there. I told you to stay there, right?" And Lakshman says, I know you were fine, and I know I should have been there. But Sita was speaking like this and like this to me, and I couldn't tolerate it." And Lord Ram says, "No, Lakshman, you should not have taken that seriously. You should have forgotten about it. She was under great duress. She was under so much anxiety. She thought I was dying. So she said things that she didn't mean. What came out of her mouth was not her. It was her stress, her fear, her anxiety, her pain, her worry that was speaking. You should not have taken it so seriously, Lakshman. Now go back, let's go back and find her. We hope she's okay." Ram didn't allow Lakshman to take that seriously. Why? Because he said, "Oh, she said it under duress." This is another way in which we can shift our perspective about the person who's hurt us. The first is to recognize that this is their nature. So they're not, it's not about me. And in fact, usually you see it's not about you when you see how they behave towards others. You are usually not the target. It's a fact. You are one instance of a pattern. That's what we are. When someone is nasty to you, they have usually been nasty to 5 other people before you, and they will be nasty to 5 other people after you. It's a pattern. It's a certain nature they have. It's something from their past that they're working out. It's a bad day they're having. Whatever it is, you're not the target. We're not the targets, typically. We feel it, but we're not. It's just their nature. But the second thing we can realize is that they're probably acting under duress. They're probably in a circumstance that the stress is so great that they're not able to function properly. Just like Sita was in that situation with Lakshman. And then the third way that we can shift our perspective, especially when it comes to devotees, is to recognize that even though they have hurt me, and even though I don't like them, but they are still dear to Krishna. He says in the Gita, "Apichet suduracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak." Even if someone does something terrible, that person is still my devotee. Because they're trying, their attempt is in the right place, their consciousness is fixed with the right goal. So they're still dear to Krishna. And this can be sometimes the most difficult thing to swallow about someone. When someone does something bad to us, our expectation is that Krishna will crush them. He's going to destroy them. After what they did, they deserve to have a bolt of lightning come from the sky and then guess what? Nothing happens. They go on with their seva just fine. And not only do they go on, but they do even better without us. They succeed. They flourish. And that's the most difficult thing, to think, how could Krishna do that? How could someone who's so nasty still be loved by Krishna? And the only answer to that question is by looking at ourselves and saying, I've got all these bad qualities. I've got all these shortcomings. I'm such a hypocrite in my practice of bhakti. And yet Krishna keeps letting me serve. He doesn't reject me. He should have kicked me out a long time ago if Krishna knew what he was doing. But somehow he lets me keep doing it. So would he not extend the same generosity to that person who has hurt me? Despite everything, they're still dear to Krishna. Okay, so we can reconsider our view of them. That helps us to forgive. by recognizing it's their nature, by recognizing that the circumstances may have been unusual, and by recognizing that they're still dear to Krishna. The second thing we can do is shift our perspective about ourselves. We can take the experience we've been through and we can reconfigure how we understand that experience. We can say, Krishna is relieving me of my pride through this experience and drawing me closer to him. Srila Prabhupada, he says in the Bhagavatam, in the Daksha story, he says, as usual, a devotee in an adverse condition of life accepts such a condition to be the mercy of the Lord. That's very powerful. As usual, a devotee in an adverse condition of life accepts such a condition to be the mercy of the Lord. Typically, when something goes wrong for us, the typical reaction in this world is what? We find someone to blame for it. This happened to me, it's your fault. You did like that, that's why this happened to me. If someone is a little more advanced, then they say, no, it's not your fault, it's my karma. That's why it was supposed to come to me. My karma means my fault. But if someone is even more advanced, then they say, it's not your fault, it's not my fault, it's Krishna's fault. It's not Krishna's fault, it's Krishna's mercy. It's Krishna's mercy. You see, what happens is when Krishna puts us through some difficult situation, through some painful situation, and we are able to go through that situation remembering Krishna. When we are in times of difficulty, we naturally draw closer to Krishna. And when we draw closer to Krishna, we come to know Krishna better. We come to appreciate his qualities better. We come to see the way he works. And when a devotee draws closer to Krishna, that experience is so wonderful that a really funny thing happens. The devotee ends up becoming grateful for the suffering that Krishna has given us. This is totally unthinkable for the average person in this world. The average person suffers, and the typical result is bitterness. Bitterness towards the world, bitterness towards God, bitterness towards themselves. A devotee, far from being bitter, becomes grateful. Why? Because you look back through that experience and you think, it's amazing what I've learned through that process. It's amazing how much closer I've drawn to Krishna. We're able to look at Krishna and our love for him grows deeper over time. We're able to look at him and say, you and I, we've been through a lot together. And that love that a devotee has with Krishna after a lifetime's worth of experiences, of troubles, of struggles, is a very different kind of love than the love that we start off with in our practice of bhakti. You know, when a man and woman first get married, that love, there's a certain fascination with that love. An excitement, a euphoria. You're so beautiful, I'm so handsome, and everything about you is so good. And that love is sweet, it's exciting, it's wonderful, nothing wrong with it. But as you spend years together, one after another, what happens? The world is such a place that you encounter many different challenges. Health challenges, relationship issues. You share an anxiety over your kids. Things financially might be a problem. You go through different challenges together. And as you go through those challenges, what happens? Now the love that you share with your husband and wife is different. It's not that initial euphoria, that fascination. It's not that. It's something even better. It's a love that's born of being able to say, we've been through a lot together. We've raised 2 kids, we've suffered through financial meltdown, we've been through health crises, we've been through a lot together. You get to know that person in a way that you never knew before. It's much deeper, it's much more powerful. That's what happens with a devotee's relationship with Krishna. Initially, we're fascinated by Krishna. Everything about Krishna consciousness is wonderful, especially the prasadam. Wow, devotees are so beautiful. Everyone's so good. Everyone's smiling. Everyone's happy. Every devotee you meet is a pure devotee, and they're just wonderful, and they've got no bad qualities. And then you stay for some time, and you start to realize, wow, he's really cranky before prasadam. He really gets cranky when he's hungry. And you meet someone else, and you say, oh, they've got a sharp tongue. This person has a bit of pride, and you start realizing, and things become difficult in our spiritual life, and we start to lose faith, and then we struggle, and sometimes we have challenges, and we wonder, is Krishna there? Will he ever help me? Why doesn't he respond to my prayers? I've asked him so many times, he doesn't care. We go through all these struggles, and we live our whole lives in struggling, and each time we question Krishna, we struggle with him, and Krishna comes through, and you make it through. You overcome those challenges. And 30 years later, you're still a devotee. You're still practicing. You still love Krishna. But now, when you have darshan of Krishna, it's very different than the first time you had darshan. The first time it was the euphoria, it was the newlywed love. Now, you can look at Krishna and you can say, you and I, we've been through a lot together. And I know how you work, Krishna. This latest challenge that you've given me, I'm not afraid, I'm not scared. Because I know how you work, typically. You'll make life miserable for me, and then just when I've lost all hope, then you'll come riding on your white horse to save me, just like you did with Draupadi at the last minute. And then I'll be so thankful and grateful, and I'll love you even more, and we'll go on like this. So I'm not worried. I know who you are. I know your good side, and I know your bad side. This is what Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying in Shikshashika. Ashnishyava padaratam pinashtuma adarshanan marmahatam karotuva yatha tatha bhavidadhatu lampato. He says, Krishna, I know you. You're a debauchee. You're completely untrustworthy. But it's okay. We're married. And we're going to get through this together. I know you well enough. Some days you'll embrace me and some days you'll crush me. It doesn't matter. You are the Lord of my life and no one else. And when a devotee comes to that point in their lives, that experience, that relationship with Krishna, they would not exchange for anything else in this world. They'd not be willing to give it up for the best, most beautiful life. And if you ask them, would you give up all the troubles you had in exchange for a perfect life, a fairy tale life? And the answer, no. Because through all those experiences, I got to know Krishna better. And therefore, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the misery I got. And that's the beauty, that's the wonder of the devotee's perspective. No one in this world except a devotee can be grateful for misery. That is completely illogical. It makes no sense to anyone in this world except to a devotee. And this is why Queen Kunti is praying to Krishna. Vipada santuta shashva tatra tatra jagat guru bhavato darshanam yatsya apunar bhava darshanam. Oh Krishna, all the miseries that we got, and she lists those miseries. The house of lack, the gambling match, etc., etc. She's listing all of them. Durvasa Muni's visit. Let them happen again and again and again. Why? She's not a masochist. She's not a sadist. She's not saying, yeah, I like to suffer. Bring it on, man. No. No one likes to suffer. No one likes to suffer. She's saying that because she's genuinely grateful for what Krishna has given her. After a life that is probably more suffering than any one of us can imagine. The amount of suffering that Queen Kunti had to go through was all the Pandavas' suffering combined. Because everything a child suffers, the mother feels it, isn't it? So she not only had her own suffering, she lost her husband at a very young age. She was disrespected in the palace, even though she should have been the queen mother. In addition to all her own suffering, she had the suffering of all 5 of her children and her daughter-in-law. She felt in her heart. So much suffering. And yet at the end she's saying, Krishna, I'm grateful for it. I would not give it up for anything in this world. Bhavato darshanam yatsya apunataya. By seeing you, never had to see suffering in this world again. So when we change our perspective about ourselves, not just about others, but ourselves, why is Krishna doing this? Then it becomes much easier to forgive, to let go, to say, let me grow in my relationship with Krishna. Whatever they want to do with this experience, it's okay, let them do. They want to gloat and think they were right, see they won. Let them win. Let them win the argument. It's okay. I want to win with Krishna. I want to grow in my relationship with Krishna. I want to go back to Godhead. That's going to be real victory. So let me focus on that. Let me let go whatever ill feeling is in my heart, so that I can succeed. I can grow in my connection with Krishna. So this is the first thing, right? That Krishna is relieving me of my pride, drawing me closer to Him by doing this. The second thing, and this is connected to the first, is we can see it as an opportunity. That Krishna is giving me a very, very special opportunity through this experience. That's how Parikshit Maharaj saw it. He was cursed to die in 7 days. Prabhupada says if he wanted, he could have counter-cursed Shringi and the sage and gotten rid of them. But he decided, this is actually an opportunity. This is an opportunity for me to draw closer to Krishna. So I'm going to take it like that. And that's our choice. We can take it as misery, or we can take it as an opportunity. And the third thing we can recognize in a situation like that is, yes, I've probably made a mistake as well. That, okay, they have made a mistake, and that's clear. But I probably had a hand in it too. And it's almost always true. You know, in Hindi we say that ek haath se taali nahi bajti. You can't clap with one hand. You had some role in it. And I had some role to play. So, like in the Jay and Vijay story. Okay, it's Jay and Vijay's fault, but the Kumaras also overreacted. So, we come to recognize it's okay. It's okay. I'm also not perfect. I need forgiveness. I want forgiveness. So I should extend the same thing to them. Okay, now, a couple more small points. One is, if we're in the very fortunate situation that someone actually comes looking for apology. Oh, before I say that, I should say one thing. That forgiving someone their mistakes, letting go, doesn't mean allowing yourself to continue being mistreated or abused. Okay? That's a very important distinction. One of the first things that we often have to do, if a situation is a one-off thing, you were having a meeting, someone said something insulting to you. That's not who they are, they were upset, whatever happened. You forgive and life goes on. You can forgive and the relationship is normal. Sometimes the harm that we receive from someone is repetitive. It's toxic. It's abusive. In that case, if we want to forgive, then usually the first thing we have to do is to extract ourselves from the situation so that we can actually come to a point of being willing to forgive. If you're in the situation, it's like drowning. And that person is just so toxic and the suffering is so intense. You can't think about forgiveness. All you're trying to think of is survival. So forgiving doesn't mean permitting ongoing abuse and mistreatment. No. We often have to pull ourselves out of the situation, and then, despite the fact that what they have done is unforgivable, we forgive them. Despite the fact that they don't even think they need forgiveness. Despite the fact that they will never acknowledge their mistake, we forgive them. For our own peace of mind, for our own happiness and joy, to give ourselves relief, we forgive them. But it doesn't mean we go back and put ourselves in the toxic situation. So we have to use our intelligence. Right? We have to use our intelligence. Prahlad Maharaj forgave Hiranyakashipu everything he had done. At the end of the story, what does he ask Nrsimhadev? He says, please, he's horrible. He was a snake. And even the demigods, even the saints and sages, like to see a snake killed. And he's my father. Please forgive him. Please liberate him, he says. Now, we often focus on the fact that he asked Nrsimhadev to liberate his father, that act of generosity. And we should focus on it. But one thing we often forget is that Prahlad Maharaj recognized that his father was a snake. He's saying that my father is a snake, and everyone likes to see a snake killed. He deserved to be killed. And everyone's thanking you for killing him. And thank you from me for killing him. But I still don't have bad feelings entirely. There's still some soft spot in my heart. So please liberate him. Means what? We can acknowledge the reality of someone's toxic nature. We can acknowledge the reality of someone's demonic nature. And at the same time forgive them. But it doesn't mean we have to throw ourselves in the situation again and again and again. Prahlad Maharaj did relieve himself from the situation. He didn't, Nrsimhadev did. He finished off Hiranyakashipu. He got rid of the abuser. But Prahlad Maharaj, he was able to leave with a forgiving heart. So this distinction is really important. You see what I'm saying? Is that forgiveness doesn't mean that we're blind to what's happening. That someone's again and again and again acting in a certain way. Sometimes we have to say, okay, I have to keep my distance. That's the best way I can forgive. Is if I keep that distance. Okay. Now, last thing. What if we are in the wonderful situation where someone is actually coming and asking us forgiveness? So far, everything I've said, I've done with the assumption that there's no input from the other side. We're forgiving because it's best for us. It's the right thing to do. And it's also best for them. But they may not be interested in all. They may not feel regretful or sad or sorry for anything they've done. But what if you're in a situation where a person is actually coming to ask for forgiveness? Then what? What do we do? The first thing is don't crush the repentant person. Sometimes we, because of what we've been hurt by, or how bad we feel, we might think, this person is down, this is my opportunity. Everyone should see how horrible this person is. Then I'll feel better. But the reality is that by getting revenge, it doesn't make us feel any better. Revenge never makes us feel better. It's a fact. The great sage Confucius, he said this in China. He said, before you go out to seek revenge, make sure you dig 2 graves. When you go out to seek revenge, dig 2 graves. Because that person you're going to kill or destroy, but who else is going to die in the process? You are. Revenge is never satisfying. It never gives us the peace of heart, of mind that we're looking for. And we know this in Bhagavatam with the story of Ashwatthama in the first canto. Ashwatthama is fuming because he's lost the war. So he comes in the middle of the night and he kills the Pandavas' 5 sons in their sleep. 5 boys he kills. Cold-blooded murder. And after he does it, does he feel good? No. He's worse. He still, to this day, Ashwatthama wanders this world, finding no peace anywhere for his acts. He got his sweet revenge, but it wasn't sweet. It was horrible. So when a person comes to ask for forgiveness, the last thing we want to do is to try to crush them. They're down, our job is to lift them up. That's the generous thing to do. You know, when Indra comes to ask forgiveness from Krishna because he's nearly destroyed Vrindavan, Bhagavatam says that Krishna meets Indra in a secluded place, in an isolated place. And Prabhupada explains why in the purport. Do you know why? Can you guess?
Krishna doesn't want anyone to see the chastisement or whatever Krishna is going to do.
Yes. Krishna doesn't want to humiliate Indra. This is the king of heaven. This is the king of Swarga. He's coming down and putting his head on the ground, sorry for what he's done. He's already repentant. He feels horrible about himself. I'm not going to add salt to the wound. I'm not going to add insult to the injury by humiliating him in front of all the Brajvasis. He's lost. I'm not going to crush him. So, when Maharaj Ambarish, when Durvasa comes and falls at Ambarish's feet, immediately Ambarish's reaction is what? Pick him up. Let things calm down. So Darshan, you go away. There's not even a flicker of, oh yeah? Okay. This is pretty good. Have you learned your lesson now? I told you. You don't mess with the devotees of the Lord. Especially not one as great as me. He doesn't do any of that. He's feeling so embarrassed. Bhagavatam says he's embarrassed. He's shamefaced that this sage is touching my feet. He's like my guru. Oh, this is horrible. Please get up. So we don't want to crush. We want to elevate the person who's coming. They're already crushed. To ask forgiveness takes a lot. They're already crushed. No need to crush them further. The second thing is, we should not expect an acknowledgement of their mistake. You know what I said when the most important ingredient for saying sorry, when we have to say sorry is what? We specifically state what our mistake was. That's what we should expect of ourselves when we apologize, if we want it to be effective. But when someone else comes to us, or when we have to chastise someone else, reprimand them, we should not expect them to acknowledge their mistake. Yeah, you were right, I was wrong. It's a very, very rare person in this world who's able to do that. And this simple principle helps so much in any kind of relationship. Often in husband and wife, one will say something to the other. Right? You should do this or that. And then they won't do it, and something will go wrong. And our immediate instinct is, I told you so. Right? And we keep drilling it in. See, you were wrong, right? You were wrong, right? You were wrong, right? I told you were wrong. And until that person says, yes, I was wrong, we're not satisfied. But does the person say, yes, I was wrong? Very, very rare in this world for anyone to acknowledge. It doesn't matter. When you correct someone's mistake, they may deny it to the ends of the earth. No, it wasn't a mistake. I never did anything wrong. But your job is done. When you correct someone's mistake, it goes in. It sinks in. They got it. Will they admit that they got it? No. If you force them to admit it, you will end up damaging the relationship. If you force them to admit it, you will end up giving them their karma and getting a reaction back yourself. So, someone saying, acknowledging their mistake is the least of priorities. If you have to point out someone's mistake, do it, and don't expect them to acknowledge it. But by doing it, you've accomplished what you wanted to accomplish. I promise you. Any sane person, when they hear something being said, it sinks in. They understand, and they're not going to do it again. Or if they do it again, the next time your words are going to ring in their mind when they do it again. Okay, so don't crush the repentant person. Don't expect acknowledgement of their mistake. And third thing is, we accept their apology at face value. We don't question their intentions. When we're making our apology, what did we say we have to do? Make our intentions clear. Make it sincere. When we're receiving an apology, the last thing you want to do is question their intentions. We take it at face value. They're saying they never meant to hurt you. We accept it. They never meant to hurt you. When it comes to apologies, receiving apologies, we should be naive. You know, the naive person in this world, the simpleton, gets cheated much more often than the person who questions. Why is he really saying this? I know this apology is sincere. I know he doesn't actually mean it. The only reason he's saying this is because he wants to get this out of me and because of this, and he wants to make a show in front of the other people. And we question like this. That's being smart. But being smart is not always being happy. If we're naive about it, this person said sorry, okay. This person said, I didn't mean to hurt you, it was an accident. Instead of saying, it wasn't really an accident, I can prove you it wasn't an accident, you meant to do that. Instead of saying that, if we just accept it as face value, yes, it was an accident. We may be naive and we may be simpleton. And we might get fooled again, but we'll be happy. Because naive people are always happy. They go through the world thinking the best about everyone. That everyone's good. They're optimists. Whereas trying to calculate what the real motivation is, the real intention is, it just dirties our mind. In trying to think of their real motivations, we pollute our own motivations. Our own mind, their ideas, their messed up mind becomes our mind. All that negativity we take in ourselves. So the best thing is not to question their intentions. Accept it as face value. Yes, what they're saying, they're speaking genuinely. And move on. And then the real test of forgiveness. The real test of forgiveness is that we try to normalize the relationship. Not that, yes, I forgive you, and I hope I never have to see you again. I mean, it's a start. It's a start. Sometimes it takes time to forgive. Forgiveness is a process. Doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes we have to say that. I forgive you and don't show your face again. But the real test of forgiveness is when we can normalize the relationship. And we see this with Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni. After Durvasa Muni begs forgiveness and Sudarshan Chakra goes away, what does Ambarish do? He immediately sits Durvasa Muni down and he says, okay, where were we now before this whole thing happened? I was going to feed you prasad, right? Please sit down and let me serve you. And he feeds him and all his disciples to their full satisfaction. And Durvasa Muni is so happy and so joyful and so grateful for that normalization that then he tells Ambarish, he says, now you sit down and take your prasad. Let me feed you. And things become normal. That's when we know we've really forgiven. When we can normalize that relationship rather than hold it on. Like I said, in some situations where it's a case of consistent toxic relationship or abuse, you don't want to normalize, you want to avoid. That's how to normalize. You can't keep saying. But in most situations when we encounter, it's a result of some mutual misunderstanding or some jabbing or whatever someone else. And we try to normalize things. And that's the greatest act of generosity. That we don't try to keep reminding that person of their fault. Keep them in a position where I'm superior. It says in the Parikshit Maharaj story that, Parikshit Maharaj, after he put the snake, he felt bad, right? And Shringi's father felt horrible for what his son had done. Why didn't Maharaj Parikshit go back to Shamik Rishi to apologize for his mistake? He started it, right? He put the snake around his neck. Why didn't he go to apologize? Prabhupada explains in the purport. He says the reason he didn't go because he knew how horribly remorseful Shamik Rishi was feeling for what his son had done, how bad he was feeling, and he didn't want to embarrass him further by bringing them face to face. Like, had he gone to see him, how would have Shamik Rishi responded? He would have been just like, oh my God, what did I do? Here's the man who you just killed, right, in 7 days. Someone who's completely faultless. He would have felt horrible. He would have been embarrassed. And to save him from that embarrassment, Parikshit didn't go to personally apologize for the snake. Because he knew that Shamik Rishi's or Shringi's offense was much greater. And he didn't want to put him in a situation where he would feel embarrassed about his offense. That's what you call generosity. And that's the generosity of a devotee who is willing to forgive. That not only am I willing to forgive, but I don't want to humiliate you through the process of forgiveness. So let it be. So, this is it. This is all I have to offer. Forgiveness is something it's wonderful. It's very rich. It's very complex. And Bhagavatam has limitless numbers of stories. As you do your own reading of Bhagavatam, one thing I should conclude with is by saying that Srimad Bhagavatam is a book, it's a work that is not stories of mythical people in far out ways doing awe-inspiring things. It is that. There's awesome battles and magical things happening, unbelievable things. Yes. But Bhagavatam is also, perhaps most importantly, it is stories, it is accounts, it is histories of real people, real devotees who live real challenges in their lives, who struggle like we struggle, who are walking the path of bhakti, trying to walk that path like we are trying. There's devotees who are materially motivated. There's devotees with pride. There's devotees who fall down from their spiritual practice. There's devotees who are struggling to forgive or be forgiven. Bhagavatam is the stories of real people with real struggles who can serve as models for who we are. So I encourage you to go back. Everything we've discussed in this seminar comes from Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada's purports, the verses, everything. I encourage you to go back in your study of Srimad Bhagavatam and go deeper into the subject. See how the devotees are relating to each other in those pages. How different personalities are dealing with each other. What they're learning, how they're growing, how they're stumbling and falling. Bhagavatam describes fall downs again and again and again, so we can learn from them, so we don't have to fall down in the same way. Or if we do fall down, that we can learn from them and pick ourselves up and keep making progress. So it's a beautiful, beautiful book. And if you don't have a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam, I sincerely, sincerely encourage you to take a copy today. To take a set of Srimad Bhagavatam, install it in your home. This month especially is auspicious for that, the month of Bhadra. It's very auspicious for taking Srimad Bhagavatam. Install it in your home and then read it. It can take many years, it's okay, but read it and relish it and go deeply into it. Because every psychological situation that we might encounter in our lives is there in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. It can be our best friend. It can be like having a friend and a therapist and a teacher all together in this book. Really, really, it can work like that. All we have to do is to recognize that Srimad Bhagavatam is non-different from Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna's body. It's his form. It's Krishna's direct presence. When Krishna leaves this world, Krishna Swadhama Utpagate, he takes everything, dharma and jnana with him. But he leaves with us this Srimad Bhagavatam, because this Srimad Bhagavatam is directly Krishna himself, Krishna's form. So we can have Krishna as our friend. We can have him as our therapist. We can have Krishna as our guide through the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. And if you have Srimad Bhagavatam already, I encourage you to take advantage of this great, great treasure that you have in your home. Read it regularly. Read it yourself. Read it with your family. Read it with your kids. You'll see that Krishna will speak to you through the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. He'll speak directly to you, not in generalities, but specifically to you. He's going to talk through the pages of Bhagavatam. It's all there. Okay, I think we have to stop here at 6:30. Thank you all very much for your attention. I really, really appreciate it.
Still do some question answers?
It's totally up to you and the devotees. I'm happy to stay here till midnight. It's up to you. I don't want to keep you from your prasad. At the same time, if there's questions, I'm happy to take them. So.
Maybe we can do 15 minutes of question answers and then 15 minutes of kirtan after that when we get prashadam.
Sounds good.
Is that okay with everyone?
So prashadam at 7? Okay. Any questions, comments? Yes, Prabhu.
So first of all, thank you so much, Prabhu. It's a wonderful class. I think we all go through those situations of hurting and being hurt by others. And one of the toughest things is to forgive others, at least for me. So I've got a couple of questions, I don't know, but there are two specific questions I had. Is that when Lord Parshuram goes and kills the person who killed his father, I don't remember the name.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like balancing the act of the other person, right? Obviously he can't remain silent. When somebody is coming and stabbing his father, he can't remain silent. He has to go and it's even his duty to protect his father, or to teach him a lesson that he doesn't do such things in the future.
Yes.
And that I feel it's a prime duty of what he has to do.
Yes.
But why should he get karma? But he did not trigger off that total event.
Yes.
He is not the cause of it.
Yes.
Somebody else did something wrong to his father,
Yes.
so he went back and killed that person. So his intention is not wrong. His intention is just to close off the event and also to prevent doing such horrible acts in the future towards others. So why should he get karma? Forget about that he is a Lord, but even, and that's the second point, the Lord is untouchable by karma. How is that he's getting karma?
So, yeah, you're right. It's his duty. There are many circumstances in which we cannot remain silent. We cannot remain inactive. We have to do something. And so he did the right thing. Like Prabhupada says, his offense was not so great. The only thing we should remember is that even when we are doing our duty and we're doing the right thing, there's still going to be some blowback, some reaction. Because this is the ridiculous, terrible nature of this world. After he kills Kartavirya Arjuna, guess what happens? Kartavirya Arjuna's sons are ready to avenge the death of their father. Can you blame them? No?
What happened?
So I'm saying, when Parashuram kills Kartavirya Arjuna kills Parashuram's father, Jamadagni, right? Parashuram kills Kartavirya Arjuna to avenge his father's death. Okay, it's his duty, as you're saying. But then, what happens next? Kartavirya Arjuna's sons now come to avenge their father's death.
But the culprit is always on the other side. Because they should have realized that.
So as this continues, so this comes to your second point. As this continues, his sons kill him, and then your sons will then kill their sons, and then their kids will kill. And you know, in many tribes, this goes on for many generations, this hatred and this killing. At a certain point, it doesn't matter who started it. No one even remembers. And even if they remember, it makes no difference. The pain has been extended so far, so long, it's extended so much that the fact that Kartavirya Arjuna started it becomes irrelevant by the 10th generation. Because everyone is hurting in the same way. You think Kartavirya Arjuna's sons don't hurt in the same way that Parashuram is hurting? They're all, it doesn't matter why Kartavirya Arjuna was killed. His sons are still hurting, like any sons will hurt. That's what makes this world such a horrible place. Is that the pain is endless, and we try to figure out what the source is. He started it. But you know, the question of who started it is a useless question. It doesn't help anyone. Because the reality is, whatever we see as the start, it goes up further behind that. This person is giving me pain. They hurt me, then I hurt them, then they hurt me, and I hurt them. Who started it? He started it. But how do I know? Maybe in my last life, I hurt him. And so therefore, in this life, he started it and hurt me. It can go on for many generations, yes?
But if you let the other person hurt you, and you keep silent and you do not react, the other person takes it as an advantage and tries to stamp over you again and again, right?
And that's why we have to talk about it. We cannot let someone do that to us. This is why I was saying very clearly that forgiving is not the same thing as accepting abuse. At a certain point, we have to say, I'm not going to participate in this cycle. No more are you going to hurt me. And no more am I going to hurt you. I'm stepping away. And that's when forgiveness can actually happen. When a relationship is toxic, then we have to step away first. We have to put an end to the pain, and then we can forgive. If the pain is ongoing, if the wounds are fresh every day, you can't keep up with the forgiveness. How many times will you forgive? Yesterday, today, tomorrow, every time, every hour? Even we don't have that capacity. Only Krishna has that much capacity to forgive. We jab him every day, and he forgives. But we don't have that capacity. First thing we have to do is stop the pain. Then we can forgive. Then we can heal. It's just like they say, you've got inflammation in the body. First you have to get rid of the inflammation. Then you can get rid of the infection or the pain or the source. If the inflammation is there, you can't, because the body is in overreacting mode. You can't cure, you can't heal. So first get the inflammation down. So first remove yourself from the toxic situation. Solve that. And then, with the benefit of hindsight, you can forgive. So, this point that karma, we don't have to respond, is not the same thing as we have to accept. Those two things are very different. I don't have to respond, I don't have to give them their karma, but at the same time, I don't have to accept anything that's coming, like a doormat.
Thank you.
There was the second part of the question. Why Lord is getting the karma?
Oh, Parashram is described by our acharyas as a Shaktya Veshavata. He is a jiva who is empowered by the Lord to do this particular seva of destroying the evil Kshatriyas. So, it's possible still. Yeah.
Right. So, it's partly based on the question. So, what if someone cannot physically remove themselves from the toxic situation? Because sometimes it does happen, right? You cannot leave the place or that person that's hurting you. You have to stay with them. What do you do at that time?
Yeah.
And then I have another question. Like sometimes how do we forgive ourselves from
Yeah.
what we did when we know that we made a mistake?
Yes. So, regarding your first question, what do we do if we can't remove ourselves? So in that case, we have to see every individual situation is different. Sometimes it's possible to tolerate. Sometimes it's possible to disconnect from the situation while staying within it. Sometimes we have to just get the courage to extract ourselves from the situation. The most important thing in that circumstance is to have very good advice. The reality is that there are people who can help with the situation. There are mediators. There are people who guide, who help, who support. We don't have to do it alone. Right? Wherever we have to seek good advice to say, what is the best way for me to solve the situation? Sometimes there is a way to make things work in a way that keeps everyone sane. And other times, we think we can't extract ourselves, when in fact we can. And someone just needs to give us the courage to drag us out, even when we don't want to, or even when we think it's too scary. So every situation is different, right? It depends on the situation, how we might respond to it, when we feel tied down or we feel stuck or whatever. But the key thing is that we should not be silent about it. The biggest healer is when we're able to talk about it to someone else and then get help. And then the second question was
How to
forgive ourselves. So first of all, let me say that if we're in a situation where we have so much remorse and repentance that we're not able to forgive ourselves, we should at least congratulate ourselves for being in a better situation than those who have no remorse at all. I would say the majority of people in this world go through life causing offense to others, making mistakes, and not caring about it one bit. As a devotee, it is natural for us to be hard on ourselves. Actually, there was one psychologist, not sociologist, named Birch Rockford. He's still working, he's a professor. He did a psychological, sociological study of the Hare Krishnas, and to see how they were similar or different to the rest of the population. And his result was this. He said, basically, all of you are normal, not much different than anyone else, which is both exciting and disappointing. Right? At the same time. Exciting that, okay, we're normal, and disappointing, like, I thought we were special. But then he said, the only difference that I can see is that you have very high standards for yourself. Most Hare Krishnas hold themselves to very high standards, and therefore you're often very hard on yourself. So this is a natural result of our wanting to improve in the practice of bhakti. But we have to remember this point, that making the mistake is not the shocking part, right? Like we started the seminar by saying, making mistakes is not unusual, it's not unexpected. having a fall down. My spiritual master, Hanumat Preshaka Swami, he always says that the question is not if we will fall down, it's when we will fall down. And how will we recover? Will we stand up and continue with enthusiasm? Or will we, beat ourselves into the ground? We don't want to beat ourselves up for what we stumble. Children, when they learn how to walk, they fall. And if they were to beat themselves up for it, they would never walk up again. But no, they say, I fell, okay, I'm going to get up and keep walking. So we don't want to be casual about it, but at the same time, okay, the remorse is done. We've taken whatever step we can to fix the situation as much as possible, and now we have to move on. Right? We learn from that mistake. The best way we can honor our mistakes is not by beating ourselves up, but by learning from it. And if we learn from it, we can safely put it behind us.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, thank you so much for such a wonderful class.
Sometimes in situations there are multiple individuals involved. How do you try to forgive in such situations? And like you said, sometimes you yourself are in a survival mode. The scars are deep in the heart, and you feel like you want to clarify certain things because some individuals you care for and you have a relationship with them. Is it okay to clarify things with individuals if it's really bothering you, or you think that you can't have the same relationship with that person going forward in the future? That's my one question. And then the other one is when you have multiple individuals involved in a situation, how do you deal with forgiving so many of them?
Yes. In regard to your first question, forgiveness is a process. Forgiveness is not a moment. It's not an act. Oh, I forgive. It's a process. And there are many, many stages of forgiveness. Many stages of forgiving and many stages of asking for forgiveness. And so, if as part of that process, we need to clarify certain things, we need to hash it out, we even need to battle for a little bit. If that's what it takes for us to come to a point where we realize, okay, I'm ready to forgive, it's okay, right? It's okay. If you read the 4th canto of Bhagavatam with Daksha and Lord Shiva's story, it took quite some time for them to mutually come to a point of forgiving, of being okay with each other. I mean, initially when Daksha insulted Lord Shiva, and this caused Sati's death, and then Lord Shiva became very, very angry, and he destroyed the whole arena, and he killed. And there was all this cursing and counter-cursing that happens between Lord Shiva's followers and Daksha's followers, all the Brahmanas. One is cursing, the other is cursing. And it gets worse and worse and worse and worse until it gets better. Until there's been enough struggling that more or less everyone gets exhausted at the end. Everyone's like, wow, this didn't help anyone. Like, this is okay. Whatever I wanted to say to Daksha, I've said. And Daksha's like, whatever I wanted to say to Lord Shiva, I said. And when they meet finally at the end, it's Daksha's next life. They've been through this whole process. And before that meeting takes place, Brahma says to Lord Shiva, you really should now forgive Daksha for what he's done. You really should. And I find it very funny because Lord Shiva says, oh yeah, I really didn't have any anger towards Daksha at all this whole time. I just wanted to teach him a lesson. I was fine, Like many of us do. when we look back. And it's like, no, Lord Shiva was really angry and very upset. And he was, he destroyed Daksha, right? But the point is, it took all of that to take place before when they finally meet at the end, they're both in a position where Daksha is remorseful and he looks back and he's ready to let go of whatever anger he has towards Shiva for marrying his daughter, which he never thought should have happened. And Shiva's willing to let go of whatever anger he has because Daksha killed his wife. So sometimes the process takes some time. And sometimes we do have to get off of our chest what is hurting us and bothering us. And that's okay. That's okay. The key thing as we're going through that process is always to have the guidance and the protection and shelter of those who are senior to us. As we go through it, if we take guidance from them, this is what I want to say. How should I say it? I want to have a meeting. How should we have the meeting? If we take that guidance, then we know that whatever we do may not be perfect, but it won't be crazy. We won't do anything so stupid that we'll get the head of a goat. Right? This was Daksha's big problem, that he had no guidance in the process. Right? He had no one to look up to who could tell him, this is how you should behave and this is how you should act. And that's why he lost his head. But if we have that guidance all the way through each step, then, Dhruva, he wanted to displace his father, he wanted a kingdom, he wanted revenge. This is the bottom line. Right? It's not a great emotion to have. It's not pure devotee. He wanted revenge. But what was the thing? He did it under proper guidance. So he got his revenge and he got rid of his desire. And he was able to forgive. Right? Because he had Narada Muni's, he had Suniti's guidance. So that's the key. If it takes time, if it's a process, if we have to say certain things, we have to it's okay. That's a process. But if we do it in the guidance of senior devotees, we get good advice, then whatever we do, it will be within certain reasonable bounds. And we won't lose our Krishna consciousness as a result of all of that. That's the biggest fear. That we end up doing some offense, we lose our own Krishna consciousness. That won't happen if we stay in the shelter of the senior devotees. Yes.
Well, if I have heard correctly, in the beginning of the lecture, you started by saying when Kumaras entered the Vaikuntha, you started explaining their devotional characteristics, saying that they are not impersonalist, but still they don't know the form of the Lord. Something like that you
They're
said.
not Mayavadis. Yes.
They're not Mayavadis. But still, I heard saying that they actually do not have the real vision of the Lord, something like that. So, they being such elevated devotees, how is it that possible that they do not know the form of the Lord?
They were elevated, but they were not devotees. They were Brahmavadis. Brahmavadi means that they understood the Lord's, they were Brahman realized. They understood the difference between matter and spirit. They were completely detached from the material world. They were at the point of liberation. They were liberated. And they knew Krishna exists everywhere and in all things. They also understood that Krishna has a form, but they did not yet appreciate that form. They had no affection, no love for that form. The Lord in his personal feature. They knew there's a personal feature. This is why they went to Vaikuntha. And they were not Mayavadis because they did not hate Krishna's personal form. They did not deny Krishna's personal form. But they just didn't have any knowledge of that. And so they had curiosity. So therefore they were jnani. They went, they saw Krishna's form, their heart became attached naturally to Krishna because they were not offensive to him.
And just one question, you said the one scientist who has done the research between devotees and non-devotees, what is his name?
Burke Rochford. Rochford. He didn't do a study of the difference between devotees and non. He did a psychological study of devotees' mental state, their character.
Do you get that report on the net or something like that?
I don't know actually. I heard it from him personally.
Oh.
He gave a presentation once at an ISKCON communications conference. But he may have published something if you look at it online.
Okay, no, no, no.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
Can I ask you?
Okay.
So, my question is based on one of the Leelas where Krishna chastises Kanya. So, after all that misdeed, Kanya doesn't go to Krishna and ask for forgiveness. And number two, even Nagapatnis had to go and say, okay, forgive my sinless husband. And number two, he didn't even glorify Krishna. Nagapatnis had to do it. So how do we understand this Leela based on today's class?
Yeah.
Just
This is why it's so important to treat our wives nicely. I mean, it's funny, but it's a reality. Kalia was saved only because of the devotion of the Nagapatnis. Otherwise, there was no reason. He was offensive to the Lord. He killed many Brijvasis, the animals, right, who would fly or drink his waters. He was offensive. And Krishna smashed his humility, his pride, by stamping upon it. He got rid of the poison. So two things. One is that Krishna did purify it by stamping upon it. It says he got rid of all the poison within his system. Both physically but also metaphorically, the poisonous mind he had, the toxic mind. But the reality is that Krishna saved him. He could have saved him by killing him. This is how he liberates most demons, is he kills them. But he didn't kill Kali, even though he deserved it. It's only because of the devotion of the Nagapatnis, of his wives, who came on his behalf and prayed to Krishna, please, he's a snake. And everyone likes to see a snake killed. But he's our husband. Just like Prahlad Maharaj was praying. And the only reason Nrsimhadev liberates Hiranyakashipu is because Prahlad is asking. So when we have a devotee in our life who is looking out for us, that's the biggest benefit we have. That's our biggest blessing to have that. That devotee can be our child, it can be our parents, it can be our wife, it can be our husband. And so therefore in that Vrindavan Mahimamrita it's sung, right? How does it go? Jaya Naga Patni Jaya. No, it goes, Dvija Patni. Jaya Dvija Patni Jaya. Naga Kanyaga. Bhakti Teja Hara. Pailo Govinda Chara. Kalia's name is not there. It's saying Jaya Dvija Patni Jaya. So this is instance number 2 of the same point. The Brahmanas didn't get the point, the Yajnik Brahmanas, but their wives understood that Krishna needs to be fed. Krishna is coming, he's Lord himself. And they went against their husbands to give Krishna his food. So it's saying Jaya Dvija Patni Jaya, Naga Kanya Gam. So and the Naga Kanyas. Bhakti Te Jahara Pailo Govinda Chara. That they achieved Krishna's lotus feet as a result of their bhakti. And Kalia got that as well, as a result of their bhakti. Okay, I think, 6:57. Time to stop. I want to thank you all so much for your association today. It was such a joy.
Thank you so much, Radhika Raman. I think that deserves another round of applause.